Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Lauren Powlovich. Lauren is a student in our Executive MBA Class of 2023, and she is also a doctor. We talk with Lauren about her decision to pursue an MBA, what led her to Darden, how the program has impacted her thus far, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with Lauren Powlovich. Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to talk with you. I've been catching up with a few of your classmates here on the show, and I feel like everybody's excited to be almost halfway through the program. And we're recording this in like mid-May, and you can start to feel that sort of energy. People are rounding that corner. It's great to see.
Yeah. I mean, it's, time has flown by, but at the same time, I am in a little bit of denial that we're not really even quite halfway there yet. So looking forward to what this next year brings, but also sort of dreading it in a way, to be quite honest.
Well, I've been around our 2022s a lot over the past few weeks, or having conversations with them. And they are right now in that mode right before graduation of looking back and taking stock on all the things that they've accomplished and just the progress that they've made. And I think there's a lot of different emotions that come with that. And for anybody navigating something like an executive MBA program, right? It's challenging, you're pushing yourself, but there's also something very special about being in this place with this group of people going through this shared enterprise together. I think that's something that people feel sentimental about, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, even just the relationships that have been built with classmates is so wonderful. And I know, that we will stay in touch at the end of all of this. But yeah, I am already sort of anticipating that and seeing the 2022s go through it right now and witnessing that and how emotional they're getting. I definitely understand that. And there will be some moments where I know I will say, I'm going to miss this. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. Tell us, who are you and what's your background?
Sure. So my name is Lauren Powlovich. I am currently the Associate Chief Medical Officer at the Focused Ultrasound Foundation, which is located here in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the foundation is a really unique tax-exempt organization. It's a medical research organization, and our mission is to fast-track the development of a medical technology called Focused Ultrasound. It's a very unique organization to work for. Most, medical research nonprofit organizations are geared toward a medical disease, and this one is geared toward a medical device. So it's very interesting, and we follow a venture philanthropy model. And it's just a fantastic place to work. So I'm grateful to be here. A little bit more about myself. I grew up in Vermont, and I went to the University of Vermont for undergrad and stayed there for medical school as well, and then moved to Charlottesville in 2014 for my anesthesia residency. So I've been here since then, and I love living in Charlottesville. I'm also a mother to one boy. He's a very rambunctious and sweet, kind, beautiful individual. His name is Finn, and he takes up a lot of my time as well. So a very important part of my life.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your journey to the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. So you had the anesthesia residency. What ultimately led you to say, I want to move to this organization doing this kind of work?
Yeah. So, it actually started out as a temporary position here at the foundation. I was sort of going through some medical challenges, and I wanted to step away from clinical medicine for a while. And so I ended up stumbling upon the foundation through a mutual connection to Dr. Cassell, who is the founder of the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. And kind of came on in a part-time role initially to do some medical writing for the foundation while I explored next steps for me and what was right for my career. And after working here for a couple of months, I really, realized that this was a great place to work. and that I really enjoyed the non-clinical side of medicine and being involved in a company where I could not only impact one patient at a time, but the impact could be so much greater and broader of a scope. So that's what really kept me here and attracted me here. The people are also wonderful here at the foundation as well. I've got great colleagues, some of whom are actually Darden MBA grads. And so that's great. And I have advanced my role. Obviously, I'm not a part-time employee anymore who does medical writing, but I have stepped into more of a leadership role here at the foundation. And I've just really enjoyed being able to use my skill set and the knowledge that I have to bring that to the table here and, contribute to our mission of advancing this technology as fast as we possibly can in order to save patients' lives.
So people may not know much about this technology. I think I've had a chance to learn more about it over the past couple months, just in some of the conversations I've had for the podcast. But for people who don't know about focused ultrasound and this medical technology, what is it about and what can it be used to treat?
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. So it actually is, so when most people think about ultrasound, they think about it being used to diagnose specific diseases and conditions. So a lot of people equate it to, when you're pregnant, you can use an ultrasound to look at the fetus inside of the mother. So with this technology, though, we are actually using ultrasound beams not to diagnose diseases, but to treat them. So you can actually use ultrasound beams to treat different diseases and conditions. It started out that the main indication was using the focused ultrasound beams. You can focus them on a very specific part within the body, much like we oftentimes compare it to focusing beams like rays of sun using a magnifying glass on a specific point. And you can burn a piece of paper or a leaf using a magnifying glass in the sun's rays. So that's essentially what focused ultrasound does as well. We use a specific lens that focuses ultrasound beams onto a specific target in the body. And this is done completely non-invasively. And so it creates a thermal lesion, which it basically burns the tissue. And so you can perform surgical ablation without having to break the skin barrier. That's the first mechanism that was discovered, and it is FDA approved to treat things like movement disorders, so essential tremor and Parkinson's disease. But there are also many other mechanisms that we've discovered throughout the years that focused ultrasound can be used for other than just burning tissue. So a couple of those are opening the blood-brain barrier, which is a huge up-and-coming field and an area where I'm really interested in. So your brain has a specific set of blood vessels that are used to keep, harmful substances out of your brain, which is generally a very good thing. So you don't get infections in your brain very often, and certain toxins can't get into your brain because of this thing called the blood-brain barrier. Well, for patients who are so unfortunate to have been stricken with things like brain cancer, brain tumors, that means that the chemotherapy can't be effectively delivered to those areas. So we are now using focused ultrasound in many clinical trials around the globe to temporarily open the blood-brain barrier to effectively deliver chemotherapy to brain cancers.
Wow, that's amazing. And a quick technical question, what's surgical ablation? For your podcast host out here doesn't know too much about surgery.
Yeah, so it's basically what it means is that it's just a surgical approach without breaking the skin barrier. So it uses heat in this instance to destroy tissue. In medical terms, we call that ablation.
All right. I'm trying to hold in my mind surgery that does not involve breaking the skin. I think all of us probably think of surgery being this thing where there's scalpels, et cetera, involved. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a revolutionary technology. And, we really, truly believe that it is going to change the landscape of medical treatments.
So some of the things that I've learned in the conversations with your colleagues of the Focused Ultrasound Foundation, one, there's a really popular TED Talk for people who are interested in learning more about this. Also, John Grisham wrote a
Yeah,
book too.
he did. Yeah. So he actually wrote a book. It's called The Tumor, actually. And it is actually about the story of a gentleman who is diagnosed with a brain tumor called the glioblastoma. And it is about his treatment course and how his family navigates through that whole awful, medical process. And, it sort of ends by fantasizing how focused ultrasound could have changed the trajectory of his course throughout his brain cancer treatment and quality of life, longevity of life, things like that. So John Grisham is a huge supporter of the foundation, and we're really, really grateful for, his efforts to make people aware of this technology. So it's been great working with him. I have a personal relationship with him. Actually, interestingly, I was acknowledged in his latest book as well. I gave him some medical advice on that book. So that was a really fun experience as well. But John Grisham is a great supporter of the foundation, and we're extremely grateful for him.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're in the acknowledgments of the book?
Yes,
thank you, Lauren Powlovich.
I actually have a copy of it right here. It's called The Judges List. And we have just developed a relationship through, me working here and him having such a passion for the foundation. And we started talking about his book, and I ended up advising him on a couple of different areas in that book. So.
Wow, that's incredible. What a reveal here. I didn't even know this was going to come up. So amazing.
Yeah, fun little tidbit. So,
well, Lauren, one of the other things that I've learned is that there's potentially hundreds of uses of this technology. I mean, there's the approved list, but there's also all these trials and exploration that's going on around what focused ultrasound can be used for. It's kind of amazing to consider the potential scope.
Yes, it is. And that's where we really focus a lot of our time and energy. So we are a not-for-profit organization. We raise funds to support research that will advance the science of focused ultrasound. And we really focus our attention on the indications that we know have potential for clinical advancement. We want to be able to help patients and save lives. That is our mission to the core. And so, we focus our attention on areas where, researchers come to us with their ideas, and we take those ideas and we internally and externally evaluate how these projects will change the landscape of the technology and how they will ultimately impact patients. But yes, it's a burgeoning field right now. It's overwhelming how much activity there is in the focused ultrasound space. So it's fun to be a part of that.
And so what is your role in the organization? What kind of things are you working on, recognizing that the organization is doing a lot of different things?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really cool to work here because as part of a not-for-profit, I think a lot of people can attest to this who work in the nonprofit space. I wear many different hats. So although my title is Associate Chief Medical Officer, I am doing a variety of different things on any given day. Most of my time is spent, in the research and education areas. And so I spend a lot of my day meeting with researchers, recording educational talks to increase awareness and to educate people about focused ultrasound technology. And then, of course, I'm involved in upper level decision making on the funding of projects and different areas, how we spend our money and how we manage the research and education team. And recently, we've actually had a bit of a restructuring within the organization, and it has been so valuable to me to have my MBA, be going through the MBA process, to have that education and knowledge right by my side, and able to really tap into that skill set in real time, which has been awesome.
That's an easy transition for what was going to be my next question of how did you decide that you wanted to pursue an MBA? We've had doctors on the podcast before, so maybe not a huge shock to some of our listeners that a doctor might be interested in pursuing an MBA, but everybody's story is a little bit different. So how did you get interested in an MBA?
Yeah, so, well, I have to say that it's always been one of those things that I knew kind of in the back of my head that I would do eventually. I'm doing it a little bit earlier in my career than I had anticipated initially, but I'm so happy to be here now. So no regrets there. I was actually one of the chief residents of my anesthesiology class. And it was in that year that I really, made the decision that at some point I would do this, because I was able to participate in a lot of different upper level management meetings and leadership meetings through that position. And I enjoyed those conversations and being a part of those conversations so much that I knew at some point I would either be, pursuing a career in, at that time, it was more hospital management. So it was always something that I'd been interested in. And then, starting here and learning more about how businesses are run, it was just confirmed that I needed this education in order to make myself better at my job and just be better for the foundation.
All right. And Darden hit your radar, I'm guessing Charlottesville, and having some colleagues that are Darden MBAs might have helped.
Absolutely. Yes, that is correct. So, being, right here in Charlottesville, having the exposure to, the UVA educational system already in my past, I had known about Darden. And then, of course, having three colleagues who have gone through the Darden MBA, either full-time or executive programs, piqued my interest in Darden even more. And then, as I started to learn more about Darden from people who were, either employed by Darden or who have gone through the program or actively going through it, the more I realized that the culture really fit, what I was looking for. And the reputation was unmatched to any other school that I would consider. So
one of the things that's interesting in terms of talking with doctors about their decision to pursue an MBA is oftentimes they end up reflecting upon what medical school was really good at and the gaps in medical school, right? People oftentimes will reflect upon, like, I didn't have an opportunity to really learn about how to manage people. I was just kind of thrown into managing people and kind of learning by trial and error. Any thoughts or reflections on that?
Yes, many. I was struck, even just within the first couple of quarters at Darden, with how little I knew about, I actually thought that going into it, the people management was going to be one of my strong suits, because I just felt like I'm a people person and I'm good at that. But the more I learned, the more I realized that, wow, I really had no idea how much goes into managing people. And it made me like the process more. But not only that, just learning about the other parts of business as well outside of people management. It is something that I feel like as a physician would have been very helpful for a lot of us to know throughout our formative years, in medical school, in residency. Give us the option to have a little bit more of, a business, be a little bit more business savvy. So it is really interesting. And it's something that I've actually thought about a lot in terms of maybe perhaps going back and advocating for that in some way at the medical school level, just to get people a bit of an opportunity to have more of a voice, honestly, at the table.
The other thing that some of the doctors in the class of 2022 have shared with me is that being an MBA program fundamentally changed how they approach leading meetings, interactions with colleagues. They used to always feel like they had to be the person with the answer, and now they listen a lot more. And I can understand for doctors, right? Everybody looks to you, like, what should be done here? And that feels like the role that doctors are oftentimes cast in. So the step outside of that is takes some growth. Yes,
for sure. Yeah. And that's where you draw the line between what hat are you wearing? Are you wearing, the physician hat, or are you wearing more of the leadership hat, and really having the difference there and drawing that line?
So you mentioned your mom got a young son. How did you think about taking on an MBA program, the time commitment, all of those things? Was it a family conversation?
Yes, it definitely was a family conversation. So I am actually, I think, one of two single parents in the Darden executive in my class. But I have a very good relationship with my son, Finn's father. So we had many discussions about what, our custody situation would look like. We are, like I said, we're really good friends. He is very supportive of me. I had to talk to Finn about it as well and tell him, hey, listen, mom's going to be a little bit more busy these days. I'm going to be back in school. And he was also understanding, although I think he knew exactly what that meant. But, there are nights where he pops onto the Zooms and sees everybody in class, and he enjoys that. And I really enjoy being a good role model for him. And that's been really valuable for me. And you can tell, I mean, I think at this stage, he's 6 years old. He is starting to pick up on the fact that, okay, mom's working hard right now. And I think he admires that. So I hope he does anyway.
So the role model piece is something that's come up a lot with parents in the program. And to your point, kids don't always know exactly what their parents are doing or what an MBA program is. I think I always enjoy that confusion that sometimes younger kids have, like, oh, I have homework too, or like, yeah, school is really hard, or something like because they know first grade or second grade or whatever their equivalent is. But the role model thing is pretty powerful, right? Helping your son realize that the advanced degree is possible, or that it's worthwhile investing in your education. I can imagine that that's motivating.
Yeah, it is. And he, being a physician coming into the program, he already, has pride in saying, "Oh, my mother is a doctor," and so, I think this is going to add to that. Although I don't really think he understands, with being a physician, even though I'm not practicing clinically. He has an understanding of what that is because he goes to the doctor. He sees his pediatrician every so often. So he kind of understands that. With this, he has no idea what, a business degree really means. But I am looking forward to having those discussions as he grows older and has more of an idea of what he's looking toward for the future, and just being able to, show him that having a higher education and getting degrees is valuable for many reasons, not just for career advancement purposes, but really just in terms of having a better breadth and understanding of the world and the way things work.
So has he joined you on Zoom? One of the things that sometimes when kids figure out that they can be on camera with their parents, they get really fascinated by watching the class or making an appearance or two.
Yes, he definitely, he loves seeing himself on the screen too. So he'll often pop his head in and I go, "Mom, can they see me?" And I'm like, "Yes, Finn, they can see you." And I'm trying to pay attention. So, but he's really, he's really great. He knows now. It's infrequent that I actually have him during the time that we have class, but when in the off circumstance that I do have him, he knows now. I say I have class at 7:00. We try to spend an hour together before that, so I can really, give him the attention that he deserves. And then he sort of takes care of himself for an hour, hour and a half while I'm on the Zoom, and he's ready for bed right when I get off. So, but yeah, he definitely makes an appearance on the screen, and I've gotten some direct messages from my classmates saying, "Look how cute he is," and he's a showman too, so he loves to be on camera.
That's awesome. Well, you come to Darden, you start the Executive MBA program. You already talked about this sort of self-discovery of leadership or the people portion of the program, and also discovering some of the subject matter, maybe more finance, accounting, how that's been helpful to you. But what were some of the adjustments that you had to make as you navigated the early quarters of the program?
Well, from like a personal life standpoint, I have to say that I've always been the sort of person that commits or maybe overcommits to things and then just says, "You know what? I will deal with it as it comes. I can do this. And I always go back to like my days in residency where I was grinding. You know, I was working 80 plus hours a week. I was up very early in the morning. I worked very late at night. And so I have that as a comparison to be like, okay, if I could do that, then I can do this. So I've always sort of had the mindset that I can add more and add more, for better or worse. But I will say that in leadership residency 1, which is the first class, you know, that we take for our MBA, and it's right here in Charlottesville. One of the things that I heard in the first day that stuck with me and has stuck with me is that there's no such thing as work-life balance, or work-life school balance. It's all about harmony. And I could not agree more with that statement, because what it's really come down to is priorities and making sure that my work, life, and school are harmonized, but there's never going to be a balance. It's never going to be like I'm working, 33.3% of the time. I am doing life 33.3% of the time, and I'm doing school the other 33.3%. But they are in harmony. And the way that I do that is by prioritizing day by day. I say, okay, today, what is the top priority? Is it work? Is it my son? Is it school? Is it something else? And that has tended to work really well for me. You know, some things, some days don't get any attention, and I just have to be okay with that and know that it will all get done. And I don't have as much pressure on myself anymore to perform at the utmost highest level. You know, I'm okay with status quo. And that's been a huge change for me as a type A person.
I feel like that's a journey that many of us are on. And I think our executive MBA students have to kind of look that directly in the face as they go through the program of like, I cannot do all these things. Maybe this is the first time in my life that I'm coming up against like just the limitations physically, energy wise, time wise, whatever it might be, like being okay with like not having everything done or in a certain place is challenging.
Yeah. It's an adjustment. But again, it comes down to just doing what I can and grinding every day and still getting sleep and exercise. Those are two things that are also very important on the top of my list of priorities, are making sure that I'm staying healthy mentally and physically.
Yeah. So to your prioritization, I think everybody has a different list, and the ordering of those things is different. And being okay with that difference is also important for students.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Everyone's different. To each their own, I say.
All right. So when you look back, where you were when you started the program to now, almost a year in, is there anything that stand out to you when you reflect upon the past 5 quarters?
So many different things. I truly feel like a different person than when I started almost a year ago. I feel like I have a different outlook on so many different things, but really just life in general and my trajectory and my capabilities. I have definitely gained a sense of confidence through this program. And I think it comes from having the knowledge that I was lacking. And, now being garnered with that, along with just advancing through my current role at the foundation and having just that confidence, I will say that has been huge for me. In addition to that, I had no idea the impact that this program was going to have on different aspects of my life outside of just the learning environment. So I have made exceptional friends with my classmates. I have been involved in some clubs and committees that I really had no idea I was going to be involved in. And it just sort of happened organically. And that has been really valuable to me and has made me even more of a well-rounded person outside of just what I wanted to get in terms of my career advancement. So I'm amazed at how much has happened in the short amount of time that has passed. And when I really sit back and reflect on it, it's really cool. And I'm really proud. So.
Well, let's talk about some of those clubs and committees, because I do think like executive MBA students, I think a lot of people, I'm going to generalize here, so bear with me. I think a lot of people really focus on the career end of things. They might be thinking about school, but that sort of like community aspect maybe is a bit more tertiary for executive MBA students who might actually think that they have to give up that as part of their MBA experience. And we try to suggest maybe there's a different story to that here at Darden. So what have you been involved with?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to say that when I started this journey, I'd already had such a busy life outside of everything, outside of Darden, that I told myself, okay, I'm not going to get involved in any clubs or anything, because I just don't have the time for that. Lo and behold, that is not the case. So I think one of the things that I'm actually most proud of, and you may not even know about this because it's a little bit on the quiet side, but after my first couple of weekends at Darden, the on-grounds weekends, as you know, they're very intensive, Friday through Sunday classes. I really started to miss going to church. Church has become a really big part of my life. And so after recognizing how much I missed that sort of spiritual reprieve that I got on Sunday mornings, I had started to identify people in my class through class discussions, they do get deep, who I knew had a faith base. And I started to approach those people and ask and engage them in conversation about whether they would have interest in starting a faith-based group with our executive class. And I was met with great enthusiasm. And so I actually founded the Darden Executive Christian Fellowship, not knowing that there was a Christian fellowship at the regular MBA level. And so every Sunday morning at 7:30 on our on-grounds weekends, we meet for a time of worship, prayer, and community for about 45 minutes before classes start on Sunday. So I was able to start that group. We're hoping to carry it forward. It's still in its infancy. Obviously, we've been doing it now since around November. But that community that I've developed around the Christian Fellowship has been really amazing. We're supportive of one another. We're like-minded, and it's just been such a joy to bring that to our on-grounds weekends. So that's one area. I am also the communications liaison for the DEI committee, which is another thing that shocked me. I did not know I was going to be so passionate about DEI initiatives, but after discussions in one of our classes that we were in, I realized that it was important to me to be involved in the conversation and to engage with my classmates on issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Lastly, I am now a leader in the Executive Healthcare Alliance group, which myself and two other classmates took those positions over recently. And so we'll see where that leads us.
Well, Lauren, you went from, I don't think I'm going to get involved with anything, to being involved with at least three things, and I'm sure just engaged more generally too. It's cool to hear all of the stuff that you've added to your MBA experience.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild to think about. Sometimes I don't really know how I get it all done, but I can tell you that I love every minute of it. And, I'll continue to put in the work, and I know I'll reap the benefits of that.
Well, one of the things that's fun about being in this role, being the admissions person working with students, is that every class has a different impact on the program. There's things that spring up or that a class is really passionate about, and they make new additions. And sometimes those additions last longer. Sometimes they're a bit more temporal. They're specific to the class. I think about the things that your class has started thus far. So you mentioned the faith-based group that you're part of. There's also been sunrise yoga, I think, on some Sunday mornings. There's now this program around creating like small group conversation opportunities for connections between students who may not necessarily have had a chance to connect in that kind of way, like kind of breaking out of maybe what would be your immediate social circle in the program. This does tend to happen, just humans. You find a friend group and maybe that becomes your key group. But I think there's some students who are working on helping, make new connections as people move into the second year of the program. So all great to see all of these things.
Yeah, I'm impressed. It seems like our class has a talent for identifying specific areas where they want to see things happen, and we make it happen and pretty quickly. So I'm very impressed with that. So I actually was a part of those initial discussions around starting the other social sort of ways to meet people and having those small groups formed so that you have the opportunity to meet people. And it was a discussion around friends, and then it turned into like, wow, this is actually happening. Okay, let's do it. And so it's just been really neat to be involved in this community and see how we can really put ideas into action.
I was so happy to hear about that initiative. I think Joy Weber, who's really instrumental in it, we got an email from her. I think she's calling it social buzz groups or something like that. That branding may not necessarily stick in the long term, but I'm hopeful to have her on the podcast, because one of the pieces of advice I will oftentimes give to incoming students is to try to have lunch with a different group of people every time, or try to have breakfast with a different group of people every time you're in residency, just to expand. Because, sometimes you meet the group during LR1 and the weekends, and it's easy to stay in that lane. But the value of the program is in meeting as many people as possible, connecting with as many people as possible.
Yeah, totally. And those buzz groups will definitely help with that. I do have to say the program team has been very good about making sure that we have ample opportunity to meet almost everybody in our class, which I know in future years may have been a bit of an issue because you stick with the same sections for longer, but they've been really good about mixing us up. So I think at this point, I at least know most of my classmates by their first name. I can identify their put a name to the face. Which is great. But yes, I'm a social person. So any chance I can get to meet more people and learn about them and really make those connections, because you never know in the future how you may end up running into one another, helping each other with jobs, all of that kind of thing. So fantastic.
Well, Lauren, building on what you just shared, what are you excited about as you move into your second year as an Executive MBA student?
Definitely excited about continuing to build those relationships with my classmates. Being on the different committees, I feel like we're really just getting started on some of those initiatives and getting to know one another. So really excited for continued relationship building there. And then also really excited to start to mold my, curriculum a little bit more with the choice of electives coming up to really cater to what my future career plans, are. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, at this point, students in the Executive MBA program can take 12 electives. There's just a lot of choice as well. I think over the past 2 years, we've probably had 40 total electives that have been offered, maybe a little bit north of that, actually, to Executive MBA students. And there's been a lot of good conversations around healthcare specifically, maybe adding an elective or two. I know there's been some development there. We've got Vivian Riefberg, who teaches popular healthcare elective for Executive MBA students. And I feel like it's just an all-around great resource for people that have this interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And as part of the Executive Healthcare Alliance, as one of the leaders there, that's one of our main goals is to really beef up some of the different healthcare electives potentially, and keep Vivian involved, because we know that she is a really great resource for us. So yes, definitely. And then also I just heard about this elective, not related to healthcare, but that Jim Dietert does on sports statistics and things like that. So I'm a sports person. I do have to say that. I've just picked up golf. I don't know how I did that in my free time, but And so I'm interested in taking electives like that as well, just to make myself a more well-rounded individual outside of the workspace as well. Learn a little bit more about sports and how I can apply my MBA to sports analysis.
Yeah, that elective has a lot of great guest speakers too. They've had people in from the Washington Wizards, and other folks have called in for it. It changes every year, I'm sure, but it's been a cool elective just to be around for during the weekend residencies when it's been meeting. So that's awesome. Can I ask you a specific question for some of the medical professionals, the healthcare folks that we talk to? Many of them kind of wrestling with this idea of like to do more of a general MBA, Darden is a general management program and very broad in orientation, or to do something with more of a healthcare focus. And while we're on the topic of healthcare related electives and opportunities to explore this interest, I wonder if you have any thoughts that you would share with folks who are kind of weighing that decision.
Yeah. So, I can only speak to, obviously pursuing a non-healthcare, track focused MBA. But what I can say is that I think for me, I have really enjoyed learning more about the non-healthcare related things, honestly, the classes in, global economy and accounting and things like that, that really just make me feel like a more well-rounded individual. And I still feel, we use the case method, and we have had many healthcare cases, actually, to my surprise, more than I thought we would have. And so I still feel like I'm getting that exposure to how this all relates back to healthcare management and, healthcare in general. And so I don't really feel like I've missed anything. If anything, I feel like I've gained so much more for doing more of the general track MBA than a healthcare focused one.
Well, I appreciate your putting up with that question. It's on my mind because we have this conversation on a pretty regular basis. Healthcare is such a growing industry. Obviously, a lot's been shared about it being 1/6 of the U.S. GDP and growing, and feels like there's just so much interest. And it's something that we get asked about a lot as admissions folks. But nevertheless, always better to hear from somebody who's made this decision themselves and going through the program. So. Yeah. Lauren, one last question for you. What's a piece of advice, something that you would encourage listeners to consider as they consider their own MBA journeys?
I would say what I've learned about myself is that I can be myself and sort of be authentic and true to who I am. And no one is not okay with that, And so coming into the program, having a healthcare background, having a medical science background, and not really having any business background, I was definitely a little bit nervous and afraid that I was going to be, unprepared for what was to come. And I kind of embraced that and admitted it to, some of my classmates and to the professors, and was vulnerable. And I am doing well, and so being myself and not being afraid to ask questions and really, get involved in the conversations that you're passionate about it's huge. And the fact that I've been able to sort of come into this as myself and really be vulnerable and show people who I am has just made me more confident that I can be that person and that I will be accepted and I will be welcome to the table.
I love that advice. I know that can feel like a leap to people, particularly in the MBA program, but it feels like it's such a powerful thing too, though.
Yeah, it's freeing. I didn't really think coming into this that I was deserving of it for some reason. I just, and maybe that's a little bit of imposter syndrome. I've talked about that a bit as, a woman in medicine and now in business. And, but this program and being able to be myself and feel valued has just really encouraged me to keep going and to keep pushing and continue to try to make a difference in society.
Well, Lauren, it's always a pleasure talking with you. I so appreciate everything you shared here. Lots of good information for our listeners to consider and weigh as they consider taking this step in their life and their careers. Best of luck with everything you're working on. And look forward to seeing you here in Roslyn for a weekend residency. I think not in the not too distant future.
Yeah, this Friday I'll be there, so not too far at all. Thank you so much for having me, Brett. It's been a pleasure.
And that was my interview with Lauren Powlovich, a student in our Executive MBA class of 2023. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA@darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.